Welcome to the Movie Spoiler Club, the channel where you can watch movie, television, and streaming series within minutes. Today we're going to spoil the movie Iron Man 2008. The movie begins with a scene of a couple of military vehicles going through a desert. In one of them, billionaire weapon developer Tony Stark is riding with military personnel. Fascinated by Stark's persona, one of the soldiers asks him to take a photograph with him. That's when the vehicles get ambushed by a group of terrorist gunmen. Soldiers get out and try to defend themselves in an unsuccessful attempt while Stark goes behind a rock to hide. A missile lands near him and explodes, causing Stark to black out. Just after seeing that the brand name on the missile was Stark Industries, Stark wakes up sitting tied into a chair surrounded by terrorists where one of them is reading something for a record. Then the movie title comes up and cuts into time 36 hours earlier. We see an award ceremony, where the speaker narrates an introduction about Tony Stark and his legacy. A colonel on stage is ready to present the award, but Stark is absent in the ceremony. Therefore, his partner Obadiah receives the award for him. Then we see Tony Stark gambling in a club at the same time the ceremony is going on. Before he leaves the club, Christine, a journalist, reaches him to ask a few questions, with whom Stark ends up in bed with that night. The next morning, Christine wakes up in the bed alone hearing the voice of Jarvis, the AI assistant of Tony. She's met and greeted by Pepper Potts, the human assistant of Tony. Potts sends her home and meets Tony at his workshop to give the schedule for the day. Tony drives to the airport, gets on a plane with his colonel friend, Rhodes, and lands in an airbase in Afghanistan. In a remote area, he demonstrates the company's latest project, an advanced weapon named Jericho, to the military, which is capable of doing very high aerial damage. Afterward, he's escorted back to the base in military vehicles, and that's when we come back to the ambush, presented as the opening sequence of the movie. Stark wakes up on a bed inside a cave, with a piece of wired-up equipment into his chest. He was imprisoned in the cave with another captive. The captive explains to Stark that he saved his life and that it was the device he attached to the chest to prevent shrapnel from entering Stark's heart. Then the Afghan terrorists enter their cell, speaking a language that Tony doesn't understand, but the other captive translates it. The terrorists want Stark to build a Jericho missile for them. When Tony refuses, they torture him by sinking his head in water. The next day, Stark and the cellmate are taken to show the stocks of the terrorists, and Stark sees that every material is manufactured by his own company. Tony shakes hands with the terrorist leader on a deal to make the Jericho and then to set him free. Although Tony knows that it won't happen, Tony sets up a workshop in the caves and starts working on the project, but not exactly the one that terrorists needed. While working, Tony learns that his cellmate is a doctor and his name is Yinsen. Yinsen tells him that this group named 10 Rings, they attacked his village and took him as a captive. Tony extracts palladium from the Stark Industries weapons in their stock and uses it to make a small-scaled arc reactor that's powerful enough to protect his heart from shrapnel and power up his project. Tony shows Yinsen his idea and the drawing of a body armor suit that he's working on, which will help them to defeat terrorists and escape. Yinsen is impressed. While they're working, Raza, the chief of the terrorists, visits them at the workshop because he got suspicious that they're onto something else. However, he doesn't identify the difference in the project, but threats Yinsen and gives them one day to finish and deliver. That night, Tony completes the suit with the help of Yinsen. While setting Stark inside the suit, Yinsen tells him the way out of the cave. At this moment, the terrorists watching at the camera see that Tony is out of sight, and on suspicion, they go to check on them. As the terrorists try to enter the room, a bomb Stark had set on the door goes off. Yinsen hears the footsteps of more terrorists and realizes that they'll be caught and killed before the armor finishes up being programmed. He gets a gun from a dead terrorist and goes forward shooting to distract the terrorists, and buy Stark some time to initiate with the suit. With a fully charged armor, Stark battles his way through the cave to find Yinsen dying after being shot by terrorists. Before he dies, Yinsen tells Stark not to waste his life, and Stark thanks him for saving his life. Terrorists fire bullets constantly at Stark, but his armor is immune to them. He destroys the terrorist weaponry stock and launches himself up, using a jetpack system in the armor, but crash lands into a desert. He's found by a military helicopter search team, led by his colonel friend, Rhodes. When he's back in the USA, Stark refuses to go to the hospital and get treatment. Instead, he goes to the company and holds a press conference. There he announces that he intends to shut down his weapon developing and distribution company. Surprising everyone, Tony has clearly changed after the time of being a captive. He has lost his arrogant ego and now sees the world differently. During the conference, an agent Phil Coulson from Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistic Division approaches Pepper Potts, requesting an appointment with Tony. and she agrees. After the conference, Tony goes to see the arc reactor that powers up his company headquarters. While looking at it, his partner Obadiah comes to see him to discuss about the announcement that Stark made. Obadiah is concerned about the finances and the company's legacy. He advises Stark to lay low for a while and tells that he will take care of the business. Potts is watching a program that makes fun of Stark's statement on TV when she's called by Tony to see him in the workshop. Tony has made another miniature arc reactor chess piece that's upgraded and more powerful than the first one. He needs Potts' help to replace the old reactor with the upgraded one, using Potts' small hands. Tony tells her that she's the only one he can trust and tells her to destroy the old reactor, saying that he's not a person of sentiment. Tony goes to meet his colonel friend Rhodes and asks him to help with his new work that isn't a military project. But the colonel disagrees, saying that Tony needs time to get his mind right. Tony turns to his AI assistant Jarvis to get the help from. Tony starts working on his own on upgrading and making better use of the arc reactor. He opens a secret project in Jarvis, naming it as Mark II. Meanwhile, Raza, the terrorist leader, finds the ruins of the first armor that Tony crash-landed with and takes it back to their camp. Tony works on perfecting the flight system that didn't work very well with the first suit, which crash-landed on the desert. Obadiah comes to meet Tony, update him about the board of directors meeting that Tony missed. Obadiah tells that the board is filing an injunction against Tony because they suspect that Tony's under post-traumatic stress. Obadiah asks Tony to give his chess piece to examine so that he could convince the board and set the situation right, but Tony rejects and leaves the room. After several attempts of trial and error, Tony manages to perfect the flight system of the suit, and he connects his AI assistant Jarvis to the suit. He takes the suit for a test run and gets excited with its power and functionality. He goes pushing to high elevations up in the sky, but the suit starts to get frozen at high altitude, causing the system to shut down. Tony barely manages to put up a thrust just before he crash-landed onto his house so that the damage to the suit will be minimized. However, the weight of the suit makes Tony fall all the way into the basement workshop, making a hole on each floor of the house. When he comes back to work after a wash-up, he sees a wrapped box on his desk set from Pepper, and inside it was the first arc reactor he built, encased with the words, "Proof that Tony Stark has a heart." We see Raza and his group are trying to assemble the pieces that they found on the desert according to the Stark's drawings of the suit. Meanwhile, Stark starts to rebuild the suit using gold titanium to solve the problems of icing and to minimize the weight of the suit. He gives instructions to Jarvis to finish the work and paint it in the colors of his hot rod. Jarvis shows a preview of the red and gold color painted suit, and Tony tells him to go ahead, saying he likes it. While Jarvis assembles and paints the suit, project named as Mark III, Tony goes to attend his annual benefit dinner. Everyone is surprised to see Tony in the charity event because they had assumed that he was resting because of post-traumatic stress. Tony greets the people and goes to the bar, where he's met with Agent Coulson, who still wants to inquire about the capture. While Coulson is talking, Tony sees Pepper Potts among the crowd. He agrees to meet Coulson and goes for Potts to dance with her. Potts isn't comfortable being seen dancing with him, but Tony says that she's overthinking and goes to the bar to get her a drink. There he meets Christine, the journalist he slept with before. She shows him a set of photographs of his weapons being used by a terrorist group in Gulmira, Afghanistan. He says that he didn't approve such shipment, but Christine says that his company did. Tony asks Obadiah whether he knows about this distribution. Passing the question, Obadiah reveals that he was the one who filed an injunction to the board to protect legacy of the company. Tony realizes that his company has been helping the terrorists with Tony unknowingly. Furious, Tony gets to the workshop to finish up the Mark III. He turns on the TV and sees the news on the worsening situation in Gulmira. As soon as the new suit is completed, Tony gets on and flies off to Gulmira to right the wrongs his company has done. He lands there just in time before the terrorists execute a row of civilians. Tony kills the executioners, leaving civilians to take care of the terrorist leader. Stark goes to the weapon stock of the terrorists and destroys it for a second time. Ross arrives there only to see Tony flying off. On the way back, Tony gets detected on the radars of the US Air Force and gets attacked on suspicion. One plane crashes when it hits Tony in the wing. The pilot escapes the plane, but being unable to open his parachute, goes down fast onto the ground. Tony comes flying in and opens the parachute, saving the life of the pilot. Tony tells Colonel Rhodes that it's him in the suit, and asks him to pass the event as a training exercise at the press. Meanwhile, we see Obadiah watching the news on the Gulmira events and how the civilians were saved from the terrorists. Then he gets up and goes to meet the remaining terrorists, including Raza. There, Raza shows him the suit that they assembled from the ruins they found in the desert. Obadiah takes the suit with him and kills off the terrorist group. Then he recruits top engineers to complete the stolen suit. Tony sends Potts to take the information on the recent weapon distributions that the company has done, agreeing to help him. Potts goes to the office computer and hacks into it. She finds out a terrorist video recording on price increment, which proves that Obadiah was the one that ordered them to capture Tony. She copies the video and the files into a pen drive. That's when Obadiah enters the room. He assumes that she's only using the computer and lets her go. But when he opens up the computer, he discovers that she has also copied the files related to the capture of Tony. Obadiah gets furious, decides to speed up his process. He meets his engineers who were working on the project of the suit. They have completed the suit, but they are unable to miniaturize the arc reactor. Tony is in his house when he receives a call from Potts, but before answering that, Obadiah paralyzes him with a device and takes out Tony's chest piece arc reactor to power up his suit. Meanwhile, Potts meets Agent Coulson, who's been waiting for the appointment, and asks him to come with her for her protection. And she calls Rhodes that Obadiah paid for the capture of Tony, and she asks him to check on Tony since Tony did not answer her call. Paralyzed, Tony barely manages to make it to the workshop, and he takes the gift arc reactor from Potts and manages to install it to his chest. Rhodes finds Tony lying in the workshop. He helps Tony up and tells him that Potts is with 5 agents and that they're going to arrest Obadiah. Tony tells that 5 won't be enough to stop Obadiah and gets on the suit. Stark comes just in time before Obadiah kills Potts. Obadiah's suit is much bigger than Tony's one, and the two begin battling with each other. Tony gets hit hard and he decides to go high with the remaining power. Obadiah comes following him up to high altitudes but faces the icing problem that Tony faced before and gets down on the ground. On the rooftop of Stark Industries building, he attacks Tony again, who's now almost out of power. Tony calls Potts and tells her to overload the large arc reactor. It releases a shockwave, knocking Obadiah, which causes him to fall down back to the reactor, destroying both himself and the reactor. After a couple of days, Tony holds a press conference to explain the incidents that happened at Stark Industries. Agent Coulson and the now short-named of S.H.I.E.L.D. hands Tony a cover-up story to read at the conference, which stated that an Iron Man, as the news called, was engaged in a battle. Tony had been with Pepper on an island. They got 50 witnesses to back that cover story up. The movie ends with Tony's statement at the press when he suddenly decides to go against hiding the truth and tells the press, "I am Iron Man." Movie trivia. Do you know that the script was not completely finished when filming began? Since the filmmakers were more focused on the story and the action, so the dialogue was mostly ad-libbed throughout filming. Director Jon Favreau acknowledged this made the film feel more natural. Some scenes were shot with 2 cameras to capture lines improvised on the spot. Robert Downey Jr. would ask for many takes on one scene, since he wanted to try something new. Gwyneth Paltrow, on the other hand, had a difficult time trying to match Downey with a suitable line, as she never knew what he would say. This movie gets the movie rating of 7.9 from IMDb, Tomatometer rating of 94 and audience score of 91 from Rotten Tomatoes. Thank you for watching, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments section, and hit the notification bell for the new movie spoiler video every week.